If I can see the man just threw out the tie tonight.
Oh.
Too hot.
Too hot.
I got red in the face at one point last night. It was really hot in the office. Oh boy.
Well, Cindy and I, we have our fan going, so we're okay.
Yeah.
Didn't know it was a topic, so just the weather.
Ah, well, that could be different.
Es-tu live comme c'est là, Pierre? C'est ça que c'est marqué?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Didn't realize it.
No,
Bonsoir tout le monde. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the special council meeting of June 8, 2021. I'll ask, before we get started, I'll just advise that Councillor Alain has texted me. He's having a computer issue trying to get on, and Councillor Tanoski had mentioned that he was going to be running a little bit late because of a work-related matter. So we'll start it off. I'll ask members of council to please announce themselves.
André Brisson ici.
Cindy Saucier here.
And I am here, so we have quorum. If we can just get the clerk to make sure she's on board.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm here.
Perfect. So I'll call for the adoption of the agenda. A motion to approve the agenda as presented. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Conseiller Brisson, seconded by Conseiller Saucier. All in favor?
André, oui.
Cindy Saucier, yes.
Perfect, that makes it easy. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. I see none here, none. So our first and only topic this evening under section 4A, reports from departments, council committee, is the recreation complex update report PR 1121. And it's that council receives report PR 11-2021 dated June 8, 2021 and approves the option blank, and then proceed to the next step of the updated plans for presentation pricing at the August 9th, 2021 council meeting. Monsieur Leduc, Madame Guittard, I'll let you do the introductions of our consultants, and then I guess we'll start on the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Good evening, and welcome to another milestone of our recreation complex project. So as promised in the last update report in May with the Colliers project leaders, this is another report that we will be presenting different concepts for the project. And tonight we have Mr. Michael Paul, Mr. Scott Warren, and Mr. Peter Ashley with us. So I believe Scott will be doing the presentation. So I will give the floor to Scott if he wants to start the presentation.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I was having some mic issues. Hi everyone. I'm happy to be back and presenting the first draft layout of the rec center. So today we'll be focusing on phase 2 of the rec center project and the first draft layout, which all of you have had a little bit of a chance to review. So I'll just jump into the presentation and go through a couple steps, and then as we go through the separate pieces of the facility, I think it's best that we'll stop at each individual piece and have a little discussion, if that's all right with everyone, about some of the features and any sort of comments, and then we can readdress kind of the overall layout and everything at the end. So next slide, please. So this is just giving everyone an idea of where we're at in the project. So we have completed the community consultations, the user group consultations, and we are now presenting the first draft of a potential layout of the facility to help us in our pricing exercise for this stage of the project. And once this has been reviewed and we went through some comments, we'll move into the high level capital and life cycle and operational costs of the facility. And as we discuss, those will be high level a la carte pricing. So each individual component will be priced separately, so we can pick and choose a bit and help help the council kind of form some different layouts and costs to help inform those decisions. Next slide, please. This is again a little bit of information on our important dates and excuse me, next steps. So it says June 7th, but we've moved the meeting to today, June 8th, to present this to council, and then we'll review some comments in this meeting, and hopefully we can address any sort of concerns and questions from council and anyone else on the meeting regarding the facility, and then we will hopefully meet again in August or potentially September, depending on some of the decisions we're going to discuss, and review costing as well to help drive some important decisions on this project. Next slide, please. So we'll just show this is just the overall site plan of where the building would sit on the site. And if we can go to the next slide, I'll just give some reference to where it is exactly on the site. It's a little hard to tell maybe on this. So Sportsplex Street is to the east of the parking lot, and Notre Dame would be to the north of this building and the way it's set. And then just to the southeast is the dome, and just south of that would be the playground and basketball courts and tennis courts. So again, I would reiterate and just let everyone understand that, again, this is a first draft, and it's to help dictate some pricing exercising to help decide where we can go with the project. So, you know, orientation and some of the layouts and some of the finer details of this layout may be missing, but we can discuss that in the further slides and see if that's something we should adjust now or something we'll note and track for the detailed design phase once we make some further decisions on where the project's going to proceed. So next slide. All right, so now into the layouts. So if we could go to the next slide. So the first part of this is the overall layout of an option 1, and this one would be, just to give some orientation again, it's all going to be orientated in the same direction, where Notre Dame is to the north and Sportsplex is to the east, just to give people some bearings on how it's orientated. This one shows the arenas on the northern side, and the pool and the library and the gym and some other auxiliary spaces in the south end. The middle arena is the larger arena of the two, and the pool was put on the west corner so it could utilize some glazing and some sunlight shining into the pool when in the summer months and the warm sunny days. So that's, if we could go to the next slide for second floor. So this is the second floor of the facility, just to show the top lobby and the common spaces and where everything would be orientated on the second floor. As you can see, it shows the restaurant between the larger arena and the other adjacent arena to the east, and some multi-purpose rooms and mechanical rooms. And as well, we along to the south, we have the second floor of the library, which in total would be 7,500 square feet on the second and first floor. So it's 15,000 square feet total. And just for the arenas, I guess I'll give some sizing just for reference. The arenas are there's two NHL sized arenas, which are the large arena and the one to the east, and the one to the west is an international sized arena. So the NHL arenas are 200 by 85 feet, and the international is approximately 200 by 98 feet wide. So that would be the overall sizing of those. And for the pools, it's currently shown as a 25-meter long pool with 6 lanes, which is 15 meters wide. And it would be approximately 3 feet deep in the shallow to 14 feet roughly, to give some gauging on the pool size. And the kiddie pool would be about 18 meters by 8 meters, and it would be quite shallow. It'd be about 3 to 4 feet. It's more of a teaching and therapy pool for kids. And just again, it's been leasing has been brought up for the community and some additional space for that. And currently it's shown as multi-purpose rooms and the fitness area on the second floor. Obviously fitness areas wasn't really brought up in any of our conversations. And so I just would highlight that those two areas would be able to be changed into leasing areas or some sort of community space if that was not something the group is looking for in terms of fitness, that could be left empty for future fit ups or anything else that might come up in conversation. Okay. Next slide, please. So the second option is basically just flipping where things are. It also has a bit of a feature on the rounded wall in the middle along the northern elevation, and the library's got a little bit of shape to it. I would point out overall the two options cost-wise are, sizing and facilities are the same. They'd be very similar in cost. So these two layouts one wouldn't be more expensive than the other, on a high level. So I would point that out. But the second, there's not much difference on the second floor, and there is some comparison tables later in the presentation. I'll go through them. They're pretty high level changes. There's not anything major in this option. It's more of an orientation and a couple of tweaks to the layout. If you go to the next slide, this is the second floor. So this is the second floor on the second option, and it again, similar to the first one, has fitness and multi-rooms. I would note too that it does show the elevator currently on the edge of the library. The elevator, again, talking cost and future detailed design comments, that elevator could be placed anywhere in the common area. I believe the reason it's in the library is it would be feeding the main lobby and the library, so it probably planned as a double door elevator, but that could be adjusted in detailed design if that location isn't ideal for the community. Next slide, please. So here's the high level comparison for the layouts. So for option 1 and 2, as I discussed, the main entrances are probably the bigger difference. The main entrance on option 1 comes in off Notre Dame, more on the lower southeast corner, and the other main entrance on the other one's more northern. But they both come from the east. They're coming from the main parking lot, and they all have similar exits and locations. It's more just where the facilities are sitting in the layout. And the arenas obviously are in different locations. The option 1 has a slightly smaller pool footprint, and I believe those are just orientation related, they're not actually smaller overall square footages. They're just orientated slightly differently on the layouts. And the library on option 1 is obviously in the middle of the facility, and the option 2, it has it more on the edge, closer to the main parking lot where people may come into the main entrance. And similar to the gym and auditorium locations, they're in slightly different locations. Option 2, they're in the middle, and option 1, it's along where the main entrance is. So we can talk about overall layout after I think it's best to talk about that after we go through each individual components. So we'll get back to this if we have any comments or questions. So next slide. All right, so we'll get into the individual components. I'll go through this comparison table, which is a comparison to what we presented, Colliers presented in August 2019, as well as what was presented in the ICIP grant in November 2019, and what the current survey results came out this year for the exercise again. So for the arenas, overall, they're very similar for the presentations. Obviously, there's not quite as much detail in the 2019, but it does cover similar check boxes to the 2019 in this survey. The main difference that sticks out is storage. Storage says under the bleachers, and in the current survey, it was more addressed that we just need to think more about keeping the storage in strategic places, and maybe thought out a little better to keep important things near the rinks and other things kind of on the outside of the facility. So if we can jump on to the next slide, we'll get into the first floor of the arenas. So most of this will just carry option 1 arenas. They're very similar layouts on option 1 and 2 in terms of orientations and the basic facilities in terms of our pricing exercise. But so this is option 1. It shows the dressing rooms down below. I would note the ref rooms are not shown in here. They will be put in on future iterations, but that's not affecting our costing exercise again. So we can discuss that, and those can be added on any revisions if that's required. But I will open the floor now if we want to discuss the arena portion of the facility and any comments or concerns that we can address or take offline and get back to anyone if needed.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions on the arena component from members of council at this point in time? Conseiller Lorraine and Conseiller Brisson?
Yeah, I don't know if can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. So price wise difference between a NHL size and international size rink. What's the difference there, do you know?
I don't have that offhand. I can get that fairly quickly. We're not quite into the exercising. The point was to go through this layout first, but I have some rough numbers, but I can take a quick check. I believe they're not a whole lot different. Obviously, there's about 10 feet wider on the international, or a little larger than that, 13 feet wider. But overall, I don't believe it's a major cost. There'll be some extra concrete cost for the pad and some other extras due to that extra length, but it wouldn't be a massive extra with respect to the overall cost of the arena. Here.
I'm just looking at it from a usage perspective.
Yep.
Bigger ice, you know, is that going to be feasible for, you know, lower levels of hockey? Actually, is it going to be okay for maybe the IP and the Atom group, where you got to split them up into 3 areas? Is it more convenient? I don't know the answer to that piece. Are we catering to figure skating in that area and potentially speed skating? So I'm just trying to understand the user group that's going to use that with the understanding that, you know, the users who are going to use the other 2 arenas already short ice in our municipality. So to now have a 3rd ice that may not meet the requirements, that, you know, it's going to be a bigger ice surface for them, not used to it, different things. So, and then if there's an additional cost to that, then what is that? And, you know, we factor all of that in together. You know, it would make a difference to me in terms of that. So that's one aspect of the difference between the 3 NHL size arenas versus a 1 international size. You know, holding tournaments, are they going to be, you know, are they okay with an international size ice for the tournaments, stuff like that. One more thing, Mr. Mayor, if I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
The walking track.
Yes.
Above the middle one. I'm going to ask, I guess, Mr. Duduc, Madame Guitar on this one, and ask what, if any, impacts we predict to have, or that we need to think about on the current walking path we have next door to this facility in the dome, where people are paying to walk around the track, and it was a lot of memberships for that, and a lot of people utilized it before pandemic, assuming people are going to come back after pandemic. Yet they can go next, they would be able to go next door to this facility and walk at no cost. So I don't know if it makes sense to have a walking path. I know people were saying, yes, put it in because I'm going to be in the arena. I understand the logistics of it, but whether or not it makes it's feasible for what the current installations that we have. It would make sense if we didn't have the dome, but I don't know if it makes sense because we have the dome and we're charging to walk next door. So 2 quick thoughts there. I'm assuming that there's going to be 2 referee rooms per arena to ensure that if there's different genders who are using the facilities. As we know, referees are male and female or gender neutral, whatever term we're using. So I want to make sure that there's that availability for people. So again, general observations for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Conseil Brisson.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the new technology or it will be, because when I pass with the arena, usually whenever with the Zamboni, there's a pile of snow at the back of the arena. At option 1, it will be against the bike path. I see that's okay, but the option 2, having it completely in front, that make a bit of a problem. But I don't know if they had change that they don't need anymore. But as I was saying, I know that in Russell Lynn and Embrim, there's a pile of snow to operate it.
Okay, merci, Conseil Brisson.
Madame? I can comment on that if you'd like.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, the snowdrop is actually, it's not, these aren't super detailed drawings. And within that mechanical electrical room along the north of the building where the Zambonis would go, there's actually planned to be a drop pit within the building for the snow. So they wouldn't need to go outside and open the garage doors every hour and dump snow in the back.
Okay. Saves on heating costs, that's for sure.
Yeah, that was part of the logic to that, yes.
Okay. Any other Conseil Brisson?
Yeah, and being on the accessibility committee, it was just to know if there was seating on the 3 rinks, on places for wheelchairs that have been taught, because if it's like stairs or things like that, it's not feasible. So.
Okay. I think they'd have to meet accessibility standards when building a new building. So, but if one of the gentlemen would like to comment on that, just to make sure.
Yeah, they'll be meeting minimum standards, but we have talked to accessibility and sledge hockey representatives and the community user groups, and there's notes in our more detailed notes when this would move into detailed design to try to accommodate some better seating and some logic to where that may go within the facility to help accommodate that better.
Okay, thank you.
One thing, if I can, sorry, one thing we've done in other, or that we've seen in other facilities is either, for viewing is like a raised platform at in some areas that a ramp up at the end so that people in a wheelchair can see over the boards. We've also done a clear board in some areas, so when you can actually look through the boards at a lower level. You would see that in international sledge hockey in their benches. You would normally see that as a clear plexiglass on the walls of the arena, so that when they're on the bench they can see in. So there's things that aren't necessarily shown on there because we're not at that level of detail yet, but those kinds of things we can incorporate and talk about later.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe Councillor Tarnowski is now online. I don't see him on my screen. So Councillor Tarnowski, if you have a question, just please raise your hand or speak up.
Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions, members of council, at this point? No. Okay, we can continue.
All right, so the next slide is the second floor, I believe, so we can. I would note before we jump from this one that I did talk to the architect about the viewing, and the restaurant and the viewing area between the east and the larger arena have glazing on both sides, so you can see into both arenas, and they were envisioning glazing along the west end of the larger arena as well, so you could look into the west one, so there would be views to in and between each arena. So that's important. So we'll go into the next slide and get into the pool.
Can I just ask a question of council on the number of seats? I can't remember the number off the top of my head, Scott, but maybe you can let them know, and just see if there's any comments on the number of seats around that middle arena.
It's 1,500. That's what's shown on there. So that's how it's scaled.
Okay.
If there's any comments on that amount, if there was expectation to have less or more, please let us know.
From my perspective, I'm not a hockey guy whatsoever, so I couldn't tell you what's the average as far as seats go or what's required for a junior A team. Or I think that if there's the capacity to use that ice rink as a theater for a concert or something like that, then definitely you want that capacity. But for seats, for me, I couldn't speak to that. Councillor Ladin?
Yeah, I think 12 to 1,500 is a reasonable number to have for this type of facility. It gives you those options as well to do different things, like you said, have a concert in there, do some sort of an event that has some seating capacity outside of the floor of the actual like the slab itself. So I think it allows you to do a few different things with it. So that on top of, whether you have a junior C, junior B, junior A type of a program, are you going to host any type of exhibition games, anything that is going to draw people into the facility? You want to have a space to be able to do that. So yeah, I think anything less than 1,000, we're not doing ourselves any service. We're doing ourselves a little bit of a disservice. But 12 to 1,500, I think, is right in the range that makes sense. So.
Okay. Other questions, members of council? No. From I guess perhaps an operational standpoint, for the consultants or for Madame Guitard, currently there's several months of the year that we don't have ice time. So are we looking at having this facility running year round? If so, what's the capacity to do different types of events on the slab if the ice is there year round? Madame Guitard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Good evening. So yeah, definitely we would probably like to have at least one surface going all year round, because right now we have to close during summertime because both our facilities are not meant to be open during summer months. So that's the main reason. And I'm sure if we do good programming, there will be some demand for some all kinds of programs during summer months. So yes, definitely we could see the use of at least one rink in the summertime.
Okay, perfect. If there's no further questions, we can keep going, guys.
Okay. So we'll get into the community pool section, which has been a fan favorite from the community, and we can get into some more detail into this. So this is also a comparison on what was presented in August 2019 and the ICIP grant and the current surveys. So again, very similar comments given by the community. The only thing in the current one that wasn't mentioned was the dry sauna. However, if that's something that needs to be added later, again, in our high level kind of cost estimate, that wouldn't be a significant addition or subtraction to the overall facility cost for this exercise, but that is definitely something that can be added in.
Okay. Was Was there any feedback? I know online on social media, I've been seeing comments that, you know, we should be looking at an Olympic-sized pool. Did we see that at all in our surveys, or wasn't really mentioned?
It wasn't. Peter might remember it a little closer than I do, but I don't believe anyone specifically asked for the Olympic pool. I think, you know, it was more just excitement of having a pool and some of the amenities to it.
Yep.
So, it just for comparison, I guess, you know, Michael can step in if he wants. We had a conversation about this actually. There's in terms of the Olympic-sized pool, which is the 50-meter pool, there is only one in Ottawa in the region. Apparently, it's not sanctioned anymore. It's not deep enough, and there's some other rules that it doesn't quite meet. However, Carleton University seems to be looking into building one, and you know, on a financial standpoint, I'm not sure if it would be overly beneficial for Russell to be competing with Carleton or Ottawa in terms of having the Olympic-sized pool. But I don't, you know, we can look more into that, obviously, but I think the 25-meter pool and the 6 lanes seem to be a very typical approach to municipal pools lately, talking to the architect, as well as the addition of the kiddie leisure pool for training and therapy. So,
okay, perfect. Councillor Tarnowski and Conseiller Brisson.
Yeah, just as a piece of information, there is a group in Ottawa right now called the National Aquatic Complex Committee that's working on getting a national level complex for Ottawa, which would have Olympic-sized pool. But so there will be a facility there. But
yeah,
just as a FYI.
There's not many in Canada, I don't think, but there's a few. There's a couple. They're very large and they're generally in the very bigger cities. So.
Okay. Conseiller Brisson, I believe, had a question as well.
Yeah, it's to know, like it says pump room and facilities. Would that be underneath the flooring? Because I don't see any place for mechanical room on the diagram.
Yeah, in our conversations with the architect, it does sound like that is the norm now for pools. It's usually underneath, so it's not shown on there, but there definitely will be mechanical spacing and some storage for chemicals and other typical things that the pool needs to operate.
Okay, thank you. Conseiller Brisson.
Yeah, and on the diagram, I see that probably it's just something I forget, but the family change room at the bottom, as if it was just one big room. Usually it's a corridor with some separate rooms so that each family can go in. So that change a bit the wall that you can see there. Just making sure that that was taken into account. And
yeah, I'll note that. We can ask the architect to add those in there. Again, that's a little finer detail than we got into for that layout. But I think that's an easy enough addition we can add in there, so we can make sure people understand that's going to be in that space.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, members of council? Don't see any, so we can continue with the presentation.
Okay, so the next slide shows the pool. So again, just as an overview, this is a typical kind of setup. There's a picture of you know, a similar pool for some comparison. It's this sounds like the common approach lately with the smaller therapy kiddie pool and the 25-meter and 6 lanes. So and just Peter can't seem to unmute himself, so I've got a message here. It does sound like the 25-meter was the ideal based off our user feedback. There wasn't much conversation about the Olympic size.
Okay, perfect. Conseiller Brisson.
if I look like for the line pole on the north side, that's the ramp to go inside the pool for handicap.
Yeah, it would be similar to the one in the picture here with the railings.
Yeah, at the north. And the other one is just that it's going gradually, that the people can go in and they don't need a lift, that they can go just,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah. Gradual steps.
Okay.
Perfect. And continue.
Okay, if are we off the pool? There's no further.
No further questions, members of council? No. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, next slide, please. So this would be the biggest change on the current facility compared to the August 2019 presentation, where there was discussion about a performing arts theater, and based off the community feedback, there was a lot of feedback about gymnasiums. So we adopted the gymnasium in place of the theater. However, we included a stage, and it doesn't show on the plan, but we would get into detailed design. The plan would be to have, you know, removable bleachers and some storage for seating and stuff to bring that out as needed for any sort of performing arts show on the theater or any sort of other event in the gymnasium. So, is there any questions on this table, or we can move into the drawing and start that conversation?
Councillor Sosi has a question.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, you're kind of combining a gym with a stage. So I'm a bit concerned about that just from a theater point of view, because that's in our community, it's basically what they have right now is a gymnasium with a stage, and then you're always possibly having conflicting, you know, issues with who wants to use the stage, or if you've got a play running for X amount of days. So, and also acoustics is often an issue when you've got a really, really high ceiling. And the other thing I noticed in the plan was you need to have you can't have actors running off the stage and running down a hall from where the washer or the change rooms were situated, you know, because it's usually like quick changes and they need it right in the wings kind of thing almost. So I'm just, that was just a couple of points that I noticed because, you know, it then becomes exactly that word you said, an auditorium, not a theater.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Saucier. Perhaps Peter or Celine can confirm, you know, we had a lot of meetings with our user groups. Did we meet with RAPA or Maison des Arts in regards to what they would be looking for in a theater?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yes, we did meet with a member of RAPA. We did not meet with La Maison des Arts, but we did get some comments from them. And that was about it. I know the member from RAPA did mention the acoustic in the gym. There's something that we all have to realize when you have a partnership in a school. Definitely the school will very often have priority over an outside community group. As for if it's a municipal facility, well, then I would think that, you know, we would have to, let's say you have a play for a week, I think this would be part of our programming. So I think there would be a little bit of difference there as for the availability, if you want. As for the acoustic, well, I know there's some, you know, they've improved a lot in a lot of that IT and acoustic world. So I think very probably we could get something very good and acceptable for maybe, I know RAPA has what, 2 plays per year, I think, Councillor Saucier, if I'm not mistaken.
Sorry. I just needed to unmute. Yes, they have 2 productions a year, spring and fall, which it would take a week of occupying the space because, you know, they have tech night and getting everything prepared up until opening night. And then usually the play runs for 4 performances.
Because if I can compare this to, we have a show that was going on at the community hall for the last 3-4 years now, if I'm not mistaken. And we were allowing them to be practicing and being there for about 10 days. So it was all part of programming. So we need just to get organized, and it is doable as long as everything is planned in advance.
Right. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Obviously, a theater, a standalone theater would be fantastic if we had shows every other week. But I don't think the community is at that stage and point in time. This seems to be a dual purpose facility, if you will, for theater and gym. But definitely I understand where Madame Guitard is coming from, saying that, you know, we will have a lot more flexibility in our schedule in comparison to schools. Because we've seen that with user groups who are using the gyms currently in the school. I have to admit, when I first thought about a gym in our facility, I was like, we have 9 schools with 9 gyms. Why are we even considering this? But based on all the feedback from the user groups, this is a huge demand, simply because they don't have that customer service with the school boards, if you will. So yeah, okay. Thank you very much for the comment, Councillor Associé. Conseil Laurent?
Yeah, just making sure that when we say gym, that we're talking gymnasium, just because
Yes.
a lot of people equate gym to lifting weights, gym equipment, riding a bike, riding a cycle, you know, that kind of gym.
Yep.
This is a gymnasium. You know, you're talking your indoor athletics versus someone who wants to go and lift weights and run on a treadmill and stuff like that. So just making sure that we have that,
Yeah,
that
thanks for
distinction between the two.
Thanks for a clarification. Might be interested to see a Rappa show going on in a weight room, though. That might be an interesting thing in the future. All right, we'll continue. Any other questions, members of council, at this point? We'll let our consultants continue then.
Okay. Well, the next slide is just the cutout of the gymnasium layout. And obviously with the gym, if it was selected, you'd have to work on some programming decisions in terms of what kind of lines and everything you're including there, because you can continue your outside theme with pickleball, badminton, volleyball, all sorts of sports can happen in that gymnasium. So that would be a future step, but that's also something that. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to point out, like, when people were looking at this overall, they were saying, oh, this section looks small in comparison to other sections. But just to put a little bit of perspective on it, like the gym, 7,150 square feet plus the stage, you know, we're almost at 8,500 square feet. That's actually bigger than the Embrun Community Center. I believe the Embrun Community Center is 8,000 square feet. So people have to visualize that this is a big space. So I think that, you know, as we move forward, when we're educating residents on, you know, how we'll have to put those comparisons out there to show that really, you know, put a visual perspective to it. So thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the next slide then. All right, so the next steps, you can go to the next slide. It's okay. The next steps are, obviously, I'd like to open the floor. We can go back to the general layouts if we'd like, if that helps. But I just wanted to continue on with the theme of letting everyone comment or raise any questions that we can address now, or go back and address in a day or so with Celine, and she can share that with council. About the general layout of the facility, or any other considerations we should hear about, or anything council would like to know about as we get closer to this decision in August or September.
Okay, I see some hands up. So Councillor Associé, followed by Conseil Brisson.
I might be jumping the gun here, but are we going to be commenting on the library layout at this point, or not?
I believe it's just, they've indicated there's about 15,000 square feet of space on 2 floors. Are you looking for something specific?
Well, I was just looking at the 2 options, and definitely I think it's more desirable that it's on the outside where there would be more light than being on the interior. And also having a separate entrance where you wouldn't have to necessarily go through the complex to get to the library. I think it would be nicer. I think you kind of have it jutting out on option 2, I believe. And I just, then you'd be allowed to have much more light in the library, which is a comment that I know a lot of users specified, and or comments that I've heard. So that was just something that I noticed. And then, yeah, that's it. I think that's it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll just say for in terms of the costing exercise we're performing and moving pieces around. So if we swap the library with the gym or anything like that, so it's on the outside, it won't affect the overall cost of what we're pulling together for the September meeting. But that is definitely input that we would be seeking when we get into the detailed design phase, as the components are selected and we know what's going to be included. So
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Conseil Brisson.
Yeah, at your plan 2, you said that the north entrance, it's on Notre Dame, but we don't have to forget that there's the nature trail in between. So that's why I don't really like that entrance, because it's wood and everything, and it's even with the parking, so it's not really on the Notre Dame road that the entrance will be, so it's easy to access the other one. The other comment I have is with the plan 1, as if they were turned like to be the big structure one beside the other, like the pool that is going north south, and having the gym beside, then it's the same kind of structure, high structure, and then having the library that, as Councillor Saucier mentioned, has a bit more light, but having the change room in between the rink and those other facilities, then it would be easier to have those meeting room all at the same place, since there will be covering the hallways that is underneath. So that's why I was wondering, but I know then that the park might be in conflict if we do it right away, because if it need a bit wider, then we're already stuck with the park that we have not even built yet.
Okay, Thank you, Conseil Brisson. So I'm not sure if the overall concept, the building, the building layout will be adapted as need be. I think if the park is built and we have to shift things around a little bit, there's nothing that's set in stone that it's exactly this square as presented, correct?
That's correct. As we decide the pieces of the facility that's going to be implemented, the overall look and the geometry of the facility, we can adjust that. That'll be in the detailed design, similar to layout concerns. But those type of comments right now won't affect the overall high level pricing exercise we're performing to help steer where we may want to piece these together with the a la carte type pricing model that we're going forward with for the September-August decision.
Okay. Other questions, comments, members of council? Conseiller Lorrain?
Yeah, from a pricing perspective, the cost difference between a 4,000 square foot library, a 7,500 main floor library, and the proposal here of 15,000 square feet two level, is that going to be a huge price difference, or have you put it there because it's not going to be that much different in terms of costing? Because I think that's going to have a major impact if the cost is going to be there.
Scott?
In terms of the library, I think the discussion was there was a want for 15,000 square feet, so that we were just showing that as the library gets more involved and they dictate kind of the metrics or what they may want in that library, it may shrink, or I think that's a maximum, the 15,000 square feet from what I understand, but we would have a rough square footage cost, so we can scale that to these different square footage. They're high level costs, so obviously there'll be some variations in those, but we can adjust the cost to 4,000, 7,500 or the 15,000 for some comparison, just for information if needed. Mm-hmm.
Again, Councillor Lorrain.
The other question I had for you, you mentioned right from the start of an a la carte type of pricing model.
Mm-hmm.
You know, each rink is going to cost this, the library is going to cost that, the pool is going to cost this. But won't there be any type of savings of doing it all together? Like if you're going to put 2 rinks in, you put 3 rinks in, you save X amount of cost to do that versus an a la carte pricing where you're buying one, you know, essentially one at a time.
Yes, there will be some economy of scale to building all of this at the exact same time. However, given the budget and the considerations that the township has to consider, we thought this was the best approach to at a very high level, estimate how much an individual rank, the double rank, a gym and everything. So you could decide, you know, 1 arena plus 1 gym plus the library is roughly X amount of dollars. As you piece those together, there will be some overall savings, and some of that savings will be offset by the common lobby areas and as well, and some of that supplementary space that comes with attaching everything. But overall, there is some savings as you start piecing this together. But given we don't have a set facility in terms of what exactly we're going to include in it quite yet, we thought this was the best approach to drive that decision. And then as we move into detailed design, there'll be additional estimates and further detail added so we can make sure that we're on budget.
Okay. I see Councillor Tarnowski.
So just a couple of questions in terms of the overall size of the main building. Councillor Lorraine was talking about different sizes of library. So if we decide to, for example, to go do a 7,500 square foot library instead of the 15,000, that extra 7,500 square feet technically is still in that building, correct? And so how do we justify, or how do we go through that, or like, is at that point do we say, oh look, we can have this space to do something else, because ultimately the square footage of the building wouldn't change, right?
Gentlemen, I think that's up to council what size building we're going to take it at the end of the day, but
yeah, I think I think this is the very high level kind of costing and placement and square footage exercise. But if you decide to go forward with the library, and right now it's at 15,000 square feet, it would be decided by council and the further design team and all those further discussions when you get into detailed design. However, if we're assuming 15,000 square feet and it is decided that it's half that or less than half of that square footage, then that would be savings in terms of fitting up that space, and it would be up to council if they would decide to keep the second floor, for instance, or open the library to have higher ceilings, or there's options on the table when it comes to that. It's just right now we're not that far along into the detailed design, so I can only make some assumptions here, but it would be totally on the council and the project team to decide if they want to make that space available for leasing or anything, or just remove it entirely.
Okay, thank you. Follow up, Conseiller Tarnowski, and then Conseiller Lorrain.
Thank you. So what you're saying is that the footprint of the actual building will not be fully justified until we make those decisions.
Yeah, we'll need to find out exactly what components council would like to proceed with for the facility before we know the exact square footage. For instance, like this is the top of the line. You're going to get everything square footage. However, as you get into those costing decisions, if you decide you only want the gym and 2 pads and a library, and you don't want the gym or the additional arena, then obviously that'll dictate some of layout changes and some costing. But we're looking at kind of the dream scenario right now to help do some costing exercise and some general, give council and the community a general idea of what an overall facility would look like, including all these components. But as you move into detailed design, it will fine tune and we can, find some savings on square footage or any sort of other details.
Excellent, thank you.
Councillor Lorrain.
Yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought there for a second. Yeah, so when you come back to us, are you gonna have, I'm assuming the next thing is you're gonna come back with actual costs of each of this stuff, and
Yes.
will you be able to show both scenarios of this is what it'll cost to put rink 1 in, this is what it would cost to put all 3 in, this is what it would cost to put 1 in plus this, with the economies of scale that you're doing when you're doing each different component? Or are you just going to look at it from the perspective of a la carte, and this is this, this is this, and this is this?
Right now, it's a la carte pricing. That was the plan from the start. Once we kind of kick the separate components and you get into the detailed design and you get a little bit into those final decisions on exactly, how many rooms, what size rooms, how large the arenas are going to be, how the pool's oriented and everything, then we would get some further estimates done on the actual facility, and that would include any sort of savings for communal areas and economy scale of building multiple pieces of this facility together. Oh.
Okay. Conseil Brisson?
Yeah, I have 2 questions. At first, whenever you're comparing the option 1 and 2, whenever you arrive at the arena, but you said that at one that the utilities are from the interior road and the other one are tree line Notre Dame. And the one that you said that are with the tree line are where the pool is south, so there's more water coming from the south. So that's why I was wondering, why does it make any difference with the placing? Should it be where it is right now, if it's at the dome, that it should be coming from the south anyways in the building?
I think
sorry,
Oh,
Scott, I can answer that question, Councillor. So by utilities, that refers to where the mechanical areas of the facility are. So if you look at option number 1, the mechanical areas of the facility are up near the top of the site, away from the playground and the other probably more high traffic areas of the site. Whereas with option number 2, the mechanical areas for the arena are closer to the playground. So that was what the difference between the 2 facilities shows. It's not, sorry if that was confusing, it's not about the actual service of utilities to the site.
Okay, because yeah, in French, service public, and in English, utilities. That's why I was thinking with the main for the water and the sewage. That's why I was not seeing why it was making any difference. My other question is, we have this meeting tonight because we said, okay, we have to decide with option 1 and 2, but from the beginning, you're saying that whether we go with option 1 or 2, it's the same price. So why do we have to vote? That's why I'm a bit like, it's just too bad that we don't have the price right now to say, okay, what we can compare, okay, we want the gym in or not, then it will define what kind of building that we want. But right now, why voting? Because it will change anyways, and whether you go 1 or 2, as I was saying, it's the same price or quite the same. So it doesn't make any difference afterward that I see.
Gentlemen? I know it's kind of a chicken and the egg scenario.
So I don't think I'll maybe speak out of turn, but we're not voting on whether option 1 or 2 is proceeding right now. We're giving you 2 different options to kind of visualize what 2 different ways it were. If there's preferences between one option versus the other, or certain aspects of one, but you like other aspects of the other option, we would like that feedback so we can incorporate that. to go back to the point, to your point, we're going to have that in September, August or September. We are going to have that discussion where we'll come back with the revised plans with pricing per component, with operational cost per component. So then you can decide on what components you'll proceed with. It is, in my opinion, it's highly unlikely that the entire facility gets built immediately, but we'll make sure that it's able to be built and expanded upon in the future. And that's purely based on what I understand is a budget versus what the cost of the overall facility would be.
Okay, thank you very much, Michael. I think it's a little confusing perhaps in the way that the recommendation is worded.
Yeah.
Stating that we're looking, that council is approving a certain option. So really this evening is more receiving the presentation and giving feedback, not necessarily approving anything at this point in time. I have a few comments that I've jotted down. Some has been alluded to by other council members. But from my perspective, what I'd like to see is not only in regards to the individual components, but the level of service to those individual components as far as costing goes. So for example, the pool, the rinks, the library, we're going with the Cadillac. This is what the price will be. We're going mid-range or we're going low range, so that we actually have all those figures to play with. And it's not only about the construction costs, but I want to see if we have the existing operational costs to compare with, as well as what the anticipated operational costs would be. I think that we have to look at those three components to make sure, because it might be that, we want everything, but realistically, financially, it'll be very difficult to do so. And I think that, we're only starting this process. Like we've reached out to our constituents, but we haven't had the in-depth conversations with residents, town hall meetings that we will need to do on this project, which will be the biggest project in the township history. So, and I think there's other questions that need to be answered. We're talking about possibly building 3 rinks. Well, if we're building 3 rinks, chances are that we're closing the other rinks. Well, if we close those rinks, what do we do with them? Do we have an idea what we're going to do with them? If we're tearing them down and we're selling them, for example, or getting rid of them, well, then what happens to our community center in Russell, which is part of that arena building? We'll have to find a solution to that, and we'll have to have those very tough conversations on where we're going. So I think it is a very much a chicken and the egg scenario. And I understand that, maybe looking at it, you guys mentioning a la carte, and maybe looking at each individual component from those 3 different levels of service will take a little bit more time or more money to do those studies. But I would rather that we spend a little bit more money up front to make sure that we do it right the first time and be informed with the proper information. Because I think that's what we need. We need the construction cost of the 3 different levels of service from every aspect. We need the current operating costs and the projected operating costs. And once we have that type of information, then we'll be in a proper situation to have informed discussions at council and with staff, and more importantly, with the public moving this forward. So that's my thoughts on it. I understand it is very much a chicken in the egg scenario, and you're looking for feedback. But I think the only feedback I can give you, we don't have enough information to make an informed decision. So the only thing I can say is that I need more information from my perspective. If other council members are ready to say, well, we want this, we want this, we want this, and we don't even know the pricing yet, I think we're doing a disservice to our community. I think we really need to look at all the options. I know that in the library strategic plan, it's not a 15,000 square foot library. In the facility state, it should have been a 25,000 square foot facility based on the 2016 report from the library consultant. So I want to make sure that we're very much looking at those 3 levels of service. We want the ultimate Cadillac, we want the mid-range, and we want the low range. And that way we'll be able to say a la carte is, well, you know what? Maybe we want this Cadillac in this one aspect, and maybe we want the low range in this one, or maybe we can play between the pricing of the two and adjust as necessary. But I enjoy the fact that there's this presentation tonight because it gives you sort of an overall look. But from my perspective, I think we really need that information, and I'm not sure if that's something extra or that's included. Maybe the administration can give us information for that, or Colliers can give us some information. But I think it's very hard to make an informed decision if we don't have that.
Mr. Mayor, the operational costs, consideration of the existing costs, as well as the projected future operational costs and the capital costs is what we will be presenting in September.
Right.
Additional consultation is not part of our scope, but everything else that pretty much everything else you've stated is part of our scope.
Okay, so just for clarification, the cost that you'd be bringing back in September, will it be looking at those 3 different levels of service for each individual component?
I think I need to understand the level of service. Like, are you saying like for example, a pool with 3 or 4 lanes versus 6 lanes, or no kiddie pool versus a kiddie pool, or
that's exactly like what you said earlier. You've presented essentially is the top level, right? So 6 lane with a leisure pool. So what would it look like if it's a smaller pool with no leisure, and maybe it's or the arenas, we're looking at 3 ice rinks. Well, maybe it's 2 ice rinks, or maybe it's 1 ice rink. We don't know. We need to have that information, and obviously, as Councillor Lorrain said, there's economies if we build everything together. So we have to know how do we piecemeal that, because I think when we have, and and I appreciate that you guys aren't mandated to do the public consultations, but I think we definitely, as an organization, will have to have public consultations, because it was nice to have those public consultations with residents say, what would you like? But that's easy to do when you don't have any price tag attached to it. I'd like the Yukon Denali in the driveway, but I'm realistic and I know that's not going to happen anytime soon. So maybe we look at, having information, and this is more for staff level, having those public consultations, information sessions, and hopefully, like I say, this might push things back a little bit, but we're coming out of COVID. Hopefully we can have more town hall meetings, more gatherings, and have those conversations, because like I say, I'd rather push it back a little bit and make sure we get it right than try and rush this to, look good on next year's election. That's not my goal. So, Councillor Associate, Councillor Tarnowski.
Yeah, and I was just hoping maybe Councillor Laurent could comment on this, because one thing I'm always hearing, like, so say we get 3 ice in the new complex, but then we lose 2. We're no further ahead, so that's another thing to consider in the number of ice that you have in the new complex. So and I'm sure you can comment on that, Councillor Laurent, you know more about this than I do, but that's a comment I hear from a lot of people. And then the other concern I have also is the agricultural fair and how they utilize that arena as part of their event. So those are things we have to consider in our decision making.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Tarnowski had a comment.
Yeah, so I guess just to make sure that I echo what you were saying at the beginning, you really want to see the capital cost a la carte, but really the operational costs a la carte as well, like our estimates of annual operational costs, right? Because I know that we had discussions about operating costs around a pool and around the arenas and the library space and so on. So that'll be interesting as well as part of that discussion. So.
Yeah, I think we essentially it could be considered a financial impact assessment to know, it's hard to make a decision on something if you don't have the comparables, and having all those comparables, then we'll be in a better position to actually make an informed decision. We can say that we want this and we can price out that how much it's going to cost, but it's easier to start chipping away at it, if you will, if we have those numbers to begin with. So I think that having the overall scope, everything, and then if we, because of potential financial restraint, then it'll be an easier discussion to look at all the numbers overall and say everybody will have their suggestions as where to trim it down, if you will. And it might turn out that we get the operational and we get all the numbers and say, no, we're fine with going with what's presented, the Cadillac, but at least we'll know where we stand. Councillor Laurent.
Yeah, two things. The first one, to respond to Councillor Saucier, you know, when we look at the, you know, what's showing here as 3 rinks, we currently have 2. If you're putting in 3, you're getting rid of 2, you're adding 1, right? So right now that would be an increase of 50% on what you currently have. So that's massive in terms of the users of the facilities. So that's one thing. The other piece is I'd like to make sure too that when we talk about the operational cost, that we're also talking about the, and I don't know if this is in your mandate or not, but the revenue generation of the usage of those facilities as an offset to those operational costs, right? Because you could sit there and have a pool, the operating cost is X, and your expected revenue is Y, leaves you in a positive or negative, and then you have the rinks on the other side. You have 3 rinks, the additional usage of 1, maybe 2 rinks in the summertime, what that additional operating cost would be to keep them going, versus the revenue that you're going to get from actual users of those facilities as the offset. And you know, that way there we know what the costs of the 2 are now. Getting, you know, potentially you would probably shut those down, I would assume so. 50-year-old buildings, probably time to decommission those buildings and go to one facility, get everything together, and you know, save on that side of things. So I don't want to just see the operation cost, what it's going to cost. I want to see what the actual net out is. You know, similar to what we did with the sports dome, and said, this is what's going to cost to put it together. This is what your operating costs are going to be, and this is what the projected revenues are going to be. And it's actually going to be a net positive, where we're going to put X amount into reserves every year, and that was the projection of the sports dome. So I want to make sure we're looking at things completely, and not just, you know, not just a piece of it.
Thanks for that clarification, Conseiller Laurent. In my mind, when I was saying operating, I was thinking end of line, like our budgets. What is the municipal contribution? What's the net benefit or loss to the corporation? You know, it might be, for example, that you know, one aspect of this facility has lower construction costs but higher operational costs, or vice versa. You know, it might be that, you know, people say, well, we want 2 gyms instead of 1, you know, and do we make concessions and see what the return in the investment is basically what I think we're all looking for, is how much are we going to spend and what's the return on the investment. So I appreciate, thank you very much for clarifying that, Conseiller Laurent. I don't know, Conseiller Brisson?
Yep, I have 2 questions. First, you say that it was mentioned that the NHL rink are 200 by 85. The international rink, what's the size of it? I know it seemed wider, but same.
Yeah, I think Scott mentioned it at the beginning. If you can just repeat that, Scott.
Yeah, I can tell you here. It's a little less than 200. It's about 197. I just rounded it up just for the sake of it. It's 200 by 98 feet approximately. There's some decimals in there. Once you put it in feet, it's done in meters, because it's international. Yeah, but it's roughly 13 feet wider is the overall difference.
But the question is, right now, I'm sure that our arena in both places are not even national size, and I don't know what's the size that they are now, but it's just that, do we need such a bigger one, or if it's even a smaller one that we need for whether it's for practices and things like that. That's why it's something that might be considered, because as I was saying, I'm not on the hockey fan or hockey or skating or anything like this, but that's why I'm just don't see if there's really a use of it.
I think Madame Guitar can speak to that. I think that's where I would see the comparison in the different levels of service. So when we look at that low end of service, it could be comparable to what we have now, so that we understand what the implications are. But Madame Guitar, can you give us a little bit of info on that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So the size of both rinks, like in Ambrim, it's 182 by 81, and the one in Russell is 180 by 80. So there's a slight difference between the two. So obviously they're way smaller than what, well, 20 feet is 20 feet. When you're skating, 20 feet is quite important. So there is a difference between the size. And I think for some level of hockey, and I think Councillor Ryan can affirm this with me, you need those size. Sorry, you need that size of rink to have that competitive hockey.
International or in NHL?
NHL.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking if the international is really a necessity or not. But that's to be bring back at the other. My second point that I had, it was just that we were talking about maybe a restaurant, a canteen or whatever, but the only place I see kind of a kitchen, and it seems quite small, is at the first plan in the middle of the multi-purpose room, which is really far if you want a canteen operated from the side that can offer directly where the people are sitting, or even from outside, because I know that right now it's an outside supplier, and even people are coming just to pick up some takeout order. So that may be something to consider, having the kitchen closer to the rest area. And for the multi-purpose room, that's why I was thinking more with retractable wall, that if somebody want a room for 25, okay, you can have one section, but if they want 50, if we have a wall that can just be fold and hidden up, then you can, because I've seen that at a lot of places, that it was even 3 or 4 small room that can be just walls taken out and having a longer room for bigger event. So that's why I'm a bit deceived not to see something like this on that plan, that for those multi-purpose room. Thank you.
Okay, Scott, did you want to, or Scott or Madame Guitar want to answer that?
For the multi-purpose rooms, again, that's important feedback for the future iterations when we get into detailed design. And I think that's definitely something that can be looked into and considered. I think that's a good idea. And the kitchen between the multi-purpose room would probably be more like a kitchenette type serving area. For the restaurant, it doesn't show the kitchen, it shows the space available for it. So that, again, we're not into the weeds on these drawings, but there would be a kitchen within that space or adjacent to it to make sure that's served. If a restaurant was selected to go in there, or a canteen, or, you know, that would be into detailed design, deciding if it is going to be a restaurant, a canteen, or some other form of viewing area.
Okay, conseiller Larin.
Yeah, so just a couple of comments, and I know I mentioned about, I had lots of questions about the international size earlier. You know, some of the comments that I did get were from groups like figure skating, where today when they're skating in our rinks here, they can't do their whole routines because they run out of ice. And it's all about usage of the actual ice space for figure skating. So then when they get into a rink, whether it's Elizabeth Manley or the other rink at the same facility, where they have the larger ice surface for figure skating. Now they're not utilizing the whole rink. So that's one of the aspects of, I think, of the reasonings behind people wanting that additional size ice. The other aspect that I would look at, I don't know this for a fact, whether or not the sledge hockey is better on a larger ice surface or smaller ice surface, that I don't know. But one of the things that we have to understand as well is, and this is something that needs to be researched, I think, Madame Guiton, is the novice and I believe into Adam now, if I'm not mistaken, the cross ice requirement. They're not doing the full ice anymore for those age groups, and they're going cross ice. So can you split that into 3 levels, have more kids on the ice at the same time, getting, is the facility going to be, or is that international ice available for 3, or is it still just 2? So you can have more games going on. If that's the case, then obviously more mechanical type of scenarios, score clocks and whatnot need to be included in the concepts, whether that's inboard, or in those area type of thought processes. Because that's where Hockey Canada has gone with their requirements. None of the arenas right now are really built for that type of a thought process. So maybe the international size gets us closer to what those requirements are. So many different things to consider from that perspective, and requirements of what Hockey Canada is pushing down down at the lower grassroots level. So.
Okay. Thank you, Conseiller Lorrain. Other questions, comments, members of council? Conseiller Brisson?
Yeah, I just see on the plan there's the viewing where the proposed restaurant, but also just to consider was the rules for alcohol, because I know that there's a lot of place that it has to be quite of a closed room, that they're able to watch the game at the same time that they're having a beer and things like that. So if we want to go on that direction, it should be something to consider on the planning for the rules for alcohol.
Okay, thank you very much. Other questions, comments, members of council? If there is anything to add from the administration or from the consultants, we do have a question period for the members of the public that we can address. Monsieur Leduc.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. From staff also, we'll be working on an update on the financial planning. Certainly also assessing the borrowing capacity with increased revenues that may also provide increased borrowing capacity options. Because at one point in time, we'll also be seeking a budget as far as what is the township ready to do on its own. What is it ready to borrow if it needed, and are we expecting any other level of government financing to proceed with different options? So at that point, when we get there, we'll have those discussions, but we're planning to work on that from the admin perspective, so that when this is presented to council, there's other discussions taking place in August or September. So I appreciate that there was a lot of good comments, a lot of good things to look at and to follow up on. I think we've taken a lot of good notes on that, and certainly we'll be following up on those discussions with internally and also with the consultant on various options. So to your point, Mr. Mayor and Council, I think you're right. Initially, we wanted to have an idea as to which options was best, but if both options right now, as in the report, are suggesting the same kind of cost levels, so I don't think it'd be necessary to really get an idea as to which option is preferred at this time. I think it's maybe a little too early now, hearing all the comments that we've received tonight. Okay,
thank you very much. I think that's where it's going to be. The resolution will just to be receive it and end it after the date, most likely. Okay, Conseil Brisson?
Yeah, it was just whenever Mr. Leduc was saying about financing, if it's something that should be brought up, if we go with a company to find, trying to find a bigger sponsor, whether like we see in the news, Slush Puppy for the last arena in Gatineau or something like that, if it's a possibility or if it's worked or not.
Okay. Monsieur Leduc?
Sorry.
Obviously, it'd be a more easy sell when we know what we're selling. So until this time,
Yeah,
where
I
we
know.
know exactly pool or not, rinks or not, this or not. So once we know more as far as what's going to be what are the components of this new facility, either to sell a piecemeal or overall building kind of thing. So I think when we get there, that'll be something we've taken note of. But certainly until we know exactly what's in there, it's going to be a hard sell to find the financing at this point.
Okay, thank you very much, Monsieur Leduc. Any other questions, comments, Conseiller Lorrain?
Just for the next meeting, you know, Monsieur Leduc said a mouthful there, but there's two things to consider is A, there's the budget, and then B, there's what are we actually going to borrow? Understanding that there's lump sum costs that are going to be paid into this prior to the need to borrow based on reserves that we've already done, development charges and other costs. So the budget, the amount that we set out isn't going to necessarily be the amount that we would need to borrow and repay with the funding that we have planned going forward. So that's two different things, and we need to make sure we wrap our heads around that concept.
Thank you very much, Conseiller Lorrain. And another aspect is how those development charges are spread, right? If it's just existing, then the development charges can apply. But if it's increased growth, then those funds can be used for different aspects of the complex. So yeah, there's the whole financing plan that we discussed, you know, future costs, this and that, and then there's how we actually going to pay for what we're going to choose. So again, part of the discussion with the community, and you know, as we move forward. Any other questions, Councillor Saucier?
It's just a comment, and then we also have to consider tax increases as well.
That'll definitely be part of the finance discussions. Is you know, I think council is proud of the fact that we've been slowly incrementing taxes specifically for this project over a number of years. So it hasn't been you know, it won't be a dramatic hit. But you know, and it depends of timing as well. Do we start construction next year or the year after? These are all things to consider, right? Conseiller Brisson.
Yeah, and one thing that we have to realize is just looking at the price of construction that has raised quite a lot. So the 52 million that was last year might be over 75 now with the increase. Will it stay? We cannot say, but it's just that something that we have to realize this, not to be surprised that if the price is even higher than it was.
Well, I think that's where the consultants come in when they give us some pricing. I assume they're going to be looking at current pricing and, you know, not necessarily pricing from 2-3 years ago. You're right. The cost has dramatically increased. Anything else, members of council or the administration? If not, members of Colliers, do you require anything else at this point? Do you have an idea what we're looking for? We're looking for the whole shebang, if you will, and break it down for us.
I think it's pretty clear to us. I think we're good. Yeah, I really appreciate all the comments. It does help us to formulate, you know, the wants and needs, and you know, I think there's still work to go. I like the idea that you've come up with to do a bit more of the service level costing. I'm happy to provide assistance on that.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right. With that being done, we'll move on to the next item, which is a question period on the meeting of the day. So I'll read out the questions, and I'll be looking for feedback from staff administration if I don't necessarily answer it to the full extent. So the first question is Mr. Dave Dwyer, 75 Mill Street. What is the actual demand for international size rinks at the moment? I think Conseiller Lorrain touched a little bit in regards to 1 or 2 user groups. I don't know exactly how much of the feedback came back saying how many people exactly wanted that, but there was discussion with user groups. And again, that'll come back to how much costs are, and it will be further part of the discussion, correct? I see heads nodding, yes, okay. Next one, Mr. Brian Young, 200 Equinox. Is at least one hockey surface accessible for sledge hockey? Gentlemen, we mentioned that we're looking at accessibility standards, making access to the rink. I would assume that it was accessible rinks.
Yes, we would do that. You'd make the surface that goes into the boards at this about the same level in the where the player benches would be about the same level as the ice surface, so that is accessible, and then again accessible to get into the benches. So yes, we would be. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Mr. Dave Dwyer, 75 Mill Street. Is there a model facility in another community that we can use as a reference for use, interest levels, expenses versus revenues? This is something I believe that you guys take into consideration. You speak with other organizations, other existing facilities to try and do that costing model.
Yes, that's right. We'll be basing it on data that we've received from the municipality, from Township of Russell for actual costs for existing facilities, as well as we'll be comparing to other facilities using that data that's been gathered from the industry.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dwyer again, is there seating areas planned for the second and third rinks designed for community hockey leagues? Gentlemen, if we can bring up the plan of the rinks again, Maryse.
Yes, I believe there's 200 seats on the two side arenas.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Mr. Charles Armstrong, 85 Castlebeau. The site currently has approximately 25 acres of tree canopy and many thousands of mixed species of trees. How will this canopy and tree density be protected, replaced, and expanded as part of this project? Look to the administration for this one. Is there a plan in place? Has there been discussions with the Environment Committee?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, yes, we already had some discussions internally with the director, Mr. Bourgon. So we will be looking into this.
Okay, so it'll be part of the discussions, a future later date. Monsieur Leduc?
Yes, from the planning perspective, there's all kinds of environmental assessment need to be done. There's South Nation study that are being provided. The special species of animals also being assessed. So this is being conducted right now until the end of July. So all these issues are being looked at.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Just,
most of the, oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor.
No, it was just a correction a bit or clarification. Whenever they're saying 25 acres, there's not 25 acres of tree canopies because they're just tree canopies on the ditch, along the ditch that is maybe 10 foot wide. So most of the proposed installation, it's bare ground that is now with the field. So there's just a small lane of trees, just clarification that it's not 25 acres of trees.
Okay, thank you very much. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that most of the facilities is actually going to be, and the parking lot is within the field right now that doesn't have canopy, so kind of reinforcing what you were saying. And we will be, you know, as part of the plan, if you look at the site plan, there's lots of trees that will be added, and that would be in consultation with the Conservation Authority as well as with the Municipal Planning Department.
Okay, thank you very much. Next question, Dave Dwyer, 75 Mill Street. Can the consultants provide any demographic breakdown of the respondents to the survey, such as where the respondents live, age range, number of years in the community, gender, and age of family members? And could they be provided some analytics of responses by the above demographics? Did we, in our survey, did we require that information whatsoever?
No, we didn't collect any demographic data as part of the survey.
Okay, well, perhaps that's something that in the future, if we're looking at doing more consultation, then we can perhaps look at adding some of those questions. Okay, next question. Mr. Dwyer again, 75 Mill Street. Is there a list of user groups engaged in discussions around needs? The last PowerPoint presentation to council suggested 45 groups were engaged. The township notice indicated 24 user groups were engaged. Correct me if I'm wrong, Madame Guitard. I think we reached out to 45 groups, but there's only 24 groups that accepted the invitation to engage with us in regards to this consultation?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council, that's true. That's exactly right. We reached the 45 groups and we were able to talk to 24, but 45 were invited.
Okay, perfect. Perhaps when we have future consultation and we have a better idea of where council is leaning as far as a concept plan and stuff, as we get more into the weeds, I think you're going to have more community feedback coming our way. But definitely we'll be reaching out, I think, again at one point in time. Mr. Armstrong, 85 Castlebeau Street. There's no detail on the library in this report. Considering the library facility model report on the library website, is this proposed library sized for a Emblem branch, a single branch, or something else? I believe the facility model, when it spoke to a single branch, was more in the 25 to 30,000 square foot range. That's not what is on this plan. We're talking 15,000. I anticipate maybe members of council who are on the library board. Is there any kind of, I know that when we did the surveys and the user groups, there was only 11 people that reached out regarding library services. I'm assuming that's the board and staff. But is there any initiative to maybe provide some further information on what's going to be included in the library? Conseiller Tarnowski?
So the library board as a group is meeting with staff, and we are going over to get a really good understanding of the needs in terms of the needs, in terms of demand, and so on. So that's going to be happening now as we go through. The initial was part of the wish list process that every user group got to do. So that was done, and now we're going to really sit down and kind of look at what is kind of the, as you mentioned, the cars earlier on, the Cadillac versus what we absolutely want, and so on. And then we'll look at what's possible and what's not possible.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Another question, Dave Dwyer, 75. Monsieur Lorrain mentioned that there was projected costs and revenues associated with developing the sports dome, understanding the challenges that COVID had presented. Were there actual numbers available from the first year of operation? Correct me if I'm wrong, Madame Guital, but we did have the initial years pre-COVID, we did have some revenues generated, and were we not self-sufficient or pretty close to it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Yes, we were self-sufficient, and that was pre-COVID, of course. COVID hit us very hard because, of course, as a municipal facility, we're holding on to the passes and delaying the passes so that people don't lose the time that they bought for. So that is costing the dome, unfortunately.
Right, presently. But if once we get past COVID, if we get back to where the indication was, it was self-sufficient. It was actually generating revenues to help pay for this future facility.
That's right.
You know, as much as I'd love to say this facility is going to be self-sustaining, not sure that's going to be a reality depending on what we put in there, but I mean, trying to be as efficient, as effective as possible with the return on our investment, I think is always a goal of the community and staff. And Conseiller Brisson? Vous êtes muté, Conseiller Brisson.
Even fois.
Okay. Just for reference, that whenever we'll compare the Russell Library right now, how many square feet is it?
If memory serves me well, I think it's about 5,300 or just around there. Is there a member of council who can on the board that can confirm that or comment? Councillor Tarnowski?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's just shy of 6,000 square feet, 5,700 and change.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. The other.
I'll double check that. Sorry. I'll quickly double check that. I want to make sure I didn't say that. That's right. Yeah. Thank you.
Combien?
Okay. 5,700.
No, 5,314. My bad.
300.
Oh, okay. So I was closer. Okay. 5,300.
Apologies. Yeah.
Okay.
All good.
Just one comment too. It's that we just have to realize that we might have to adjust ourselves too with transport, because we have to realize that right now there's a lot of people from school that are walking to our two arena that are in town, that since they will be out of town, we might have to consider buses traveling if we want it to work properly and being financially viable, that we might have to invest with during school, but also during the day, maybe like elderly houses to bring them to the pool if we have a pool and things like that. So it's just something to keep in mind too for operation costs, that it might be a good thing to have.
Thank you very much, Conseiller Brisson. I believe currently the township actually gives free ice times, a certain amount to all the schools. And I'm not sure how much they actually take above that, where they actually pay. But Madame Guittard, as-tu de l'info là-dessus?
C'est pas pour ça que je voulais dire. Moi, c'était pas pour juste aller de même. C'est que les pratiques de hockey, souvent le monde, c'est pas les parents qui vont les mener. Vu qu'ils peuvent marcher de l'école, ils descendent aux pratiques de hockey, ou que ce soit avant ou après, ou de patin. C'est ça que je veux dire, que qui sont dans le village, ils peuvent marcher, mais rendus centre, comme ça va être là, ils n'auront pas cette possibilité-là. C'est ça que je veux dire.
Yeah. Okay. No. Now I understand. You're looking at possibly adding a service to increase
inside.
Yeah. But Monsieur Leduc, tu voulais-tu faire un commentaire là-dessus?
If I'm hearing correctly, Mr. Brisson is proposing a transit system to bring to the arena. That's not part of our mandate right now. I don't know if council's ready to commit on that right now in operating costs. I understand it might be further for some, it might be closer for others. So hard to say that it's going to be further for everybody. So yeah. To me, unless council gives us a clear direction, you want us to set up a transit system to figure out costs, to add to operational costs. But right now, we're not going to. It's not in our mandate to do that.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm not interested in looking at that as well either. I saw hands up, Councillor Saucier, Councillor Tarnowski.
Well, I'm just responding to Councillor Brisson's. I mean, his point is valid. Like that, the schools all walk in slotted times throughout the day to go skating all winter long. They walk with their skates. They leave school, so they won't be able to do that to get to the facility in the middle if there's no arenas. So that was, I think that's where he was coming from, was just some kind of not a transit system, but a shuttle system more to or for seniors as well. But I mean, the retirement homes will provide their own to get seniors to the hub. But that's a good point about all the schools that walk to skate all the time.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, we do provide the facility free to the school. Asking us to increase that by paying for transit service or shuttle service as well. I think that's a potential discussion down the road. I mean, is this complex going to be ideal for everybody within the township? I think we have to be realistic that it's not, because if we wanted to simply consider walking distance, then we wouldn't be putting these arenas together. We would just be tearing down and replacing what we have, and not necessarily looking at finding efficiencies. So that's going to be part of the discussions, and it's going to be things to consider when we have those talks. We're still high level, but once we get down into the weeds, it's going to make for interesting conversations for sure. Madame Guittard?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So I could confirm that in Embrun, all the schools have to be bused to the Embrun Marina, even though they're very close proximity because of insurance issues. Right. All the schools have to take the kids and put them on a bus for skating, hockey practices, sport études. They all come on the bus. So I don't think it's going to change too much going to that location. In Russell, I can't confirm if they're still walking, but I know for Embrun they have to take the bus for the insurance.
Yeah, and I think part of the discussions when we will be looking at operation costs and revenues and that kind of stuff, the cost of these facilities is going to be higher than what the current costs are. Most likely, if you will, like, we're asking, we're going to be building a $50 million facility. We're not going to be charging the same rate on that we were on a previous facility that had no additional cost to it. So that'll be part of the discussion as well moving forward. But definitely it's going to be an interesting ride going through this. And I do realize that we have added a little bit of costs to the user groups to help pay for this, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's where those costs will stay, right? That'll be part of the financing plan moving forward. I know that when you look at other areas in the city of Ottawa and, private facilities, they tend to be a little bit higher than we are currently. So, and I see one last question, Mr. Dwyer, thanks for the explanation. Follow-up. I was interested in a list of groups that engage in the consultation process. Madame Guittard, one of our previous reports, did we have that listed, which groups actually participated?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I would have to go back in our list. I know we did list all the comments and I think the names were there.
Okay. Yes, the names were there.
Okay, so there you go.
Yeah.
So when you, Mr. Dwyer, when you're looking at the previous report that had the list of all the comments, you'll be able to see which user groups commented on that. Thank you. If there's no further questions at this point in time, we would go to resolutions. Again, I'll read out the resolution. I'll add a mover and I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, and then we will proceed with most likely an amendment. So the current resolution is stated that council receives report PR 11/2021 dated June 8, 2021, and approves the option blank, and then proceed the next step of the updated plan presentation for pricing at the August 9, 2021 council meeting. So I need a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor, please. Moved by Conseiller Brisson, seconded by Conseiller Lorrain. Do we have anyone make an amendment to this resolution? Councillor Brisson?
Oui, je ferais juste ôter et adopte l'option, puis juste garder le reste, parce que le reste, ça dit qu'on le reçoit, puis on procède à l'étape suivante. Fait que je pense que c'est la seule chose qu'on a besoin d'enlever de et adopte l'option.
Okay, so it would be that council receives report PR 11/2021 dated June 8, 2021, and then proceed to the next step of the updated plans for the presentation for pricing at the August 9, 2021 council meeting. Okay, do we have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Tarnowski, thank you. Just a question from my perspective. Regarding the fact that, we sort of gave direction that the financial analysis might be bigger in scope than we were originally talking about. Is August 9th still a realistic time frame, or should we simply say at an August council meeting? I think I'd be more comfortable, Monsieur Leduc, at an August council meeting. I think this topic is something that definitely deserves its own special meeting. So I think that it might be a standalone meeting again on this topic, not necessarily as part of an August meeting. Monsieur Leduc, thoughts on that?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, yes, I think the more we go into the detail of this project, that they should be dedicated to special meetings, so we can take all the time we need to discuss all kinds of matters. So yes, it could be a different date in August, maybe even a little pushback, so that there's more time to prepare further to your request. So I think that should be a standalone
meeting. So perhaps if the mover and a seconder are in agreement, we'll also add, instead of saying at the August 9th meeting, we will say at a August special meeting.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
Okay, perfect. So with that, any other questions on the notice or the amendment? Monsieur Leduc?
And to your point, Mr. Mayor, if our consultants have any issues with what was requested tonight, that we may bring back something on June 21st if there's anything we need to clear up with council regarding costing or something else, but we'll be having those discussions with them as early as tomorrow, I'm sure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have a motion to amend with the amendment. So we have a mover and a seconder for the amendment. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Michael Ternosky, yes.
Andre, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Sosa, yes.
Perfect. It is carried. The amendment is carried. So now I'll call for the vote on the resolution itself as amended. So all those in favor?
Michael Ternosky, oui.
Andre, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Sosa, yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. With that, I'd like to thank very much staff and our consultants, Collier Group. Very much appreciate the information being presented, the great working relationship you guys have with staff. It is like I mentioned earlier, it will be the largest project cost-wise in township history. So we want to make sure we get it right. So appreciate all your feedback and insight. Merci beaucoup le côté administratif qui travaille très fort sur ce dossier-là pour amener what's going to be a jewel in our community for years to come. So our next meeting for council, the next special public meeting of council will be held on Monday, June 5th.
June 21st.
June 21st, sorry, at 5 p.m. We have a special meeting, and then the regular meeting that night following the special meeting at 6 p.m. will be started. So with that, we have a confirming bylaw, that bylaw 2021-060, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Russell at its regular council meeting held on June 8, 2021, be read a first, second, and third time and passed. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Ternosky, second by Conseiller Brisson. All in favor?
Michael Ternosky, yes.
Andre, oui.
Jamie, yes.
Cindy Sosa, yes.
Thank you very much. Before I adjourn, anything else to add from our administration or Colliers? Seeing, hearing none? No? Awesome. Good night. Yes. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening. We are adjourned at 7:51 p.m. Thanks to the members of the public who are watching this evening. Very much appreciated. Merci beaucoup.
Merci.